Well, guys, what can I say? I just cannot stop talking about the PSP lately, and more particularly, the incredible amount of wrestling games that were released on the little console. Yeah, not just WWE. Yeah, we all know about the great SmackDown vs. Raw games ported to the console. As a matter of fact, I did a whole entire video on the first SmackDown vs. Raw game released on the console, SVR06. I'll put a link to that video in the description of this one if you're interested in checking that out. But I wanted to give some love to some of the other wrestling games released on the platform because there are some really good ones, and I think we're gonna start with TNA Impact Cross the Line. Yeah, we all know TNA Impact on the console, 360 PS3, was not the best. It looked pretty good, but when it came down to the gameplay, unfortunately, it kind of fell apart. But I think those very same gameplay mechanics translate rather well to the PSP version just due to the PSP's limited capabilities. Not a bad thing at all. It actually seems like it was meant to be played on the PSP, and visually, you'll get that impression as well. This game looks great. As a matter of fact, out of all the games we're going to talk about in this video, I would put this game up against the best in terms of graphics. It even looks better than its PS2 counterpart, which is definitely saying something at this point in the console's lifespan. The game has a serviceable match selection, including multi-man matches ranging from the Tag Team to Ultimate X. The roster is also good, with additional wrestlers added and subtracted from the console versions, many of which will need to be unlocked through the story mode. Speaking of the story mode, it's more or less the same as the console version. It has the same voiceover, the same cutscenes. They look a little muddied down, of course they do. They had to fit this game on the PSP after all, but it's still rather impressive. Although you don't get to create what your character looks like, instead you just play as Suicide, the wrestler, throughout the entire duration of the story's campaign. Which honestly isn't a big deal for me personally, but I do understand that wrestling games and customizing wrestlers have gone hand in hand dating back to the PS1 days. However, I do think the rest of the game is good enough to overlook this one shortcoming. I mean, just look at it. From a presentation standpoint, they knocked it out of the frickin' park. You have entrances accompanied by ring announcer intros, commentary in-match, which the otherwise great WWE PSP ports didn't even have, and the character models themselves again look awesome. I had a lot of fun playing this game for this video, especially the Ultimate X matches, and if you have a friend who has a PSP, you can link up and play that match together, which I'm sure would be a ton of fun. And a multi-man Ultimate X match goes absolutely bananas. I'm not sure how much replayability the match itself has, but it definitely is worth checking out at least a few times and you'll have a good amount of fun that way. Guys, if you've only played the console version of TNA Impact and you're writing this one off and you have access to a PSP or an emulator, you're doing yourself a disservice not checking this one out. It is that good. I'm not saying it's the perfect wrestling game. I'm not even saying it's the best wrestling game on the PSP, but I do think it's worth checking out if you haven't played it before. It does have a lot to offer that you can't get in other wrestling games. And after all, at the end of the day, that's what I like. That's what I look for today in wrestling games. Is this an experience that I can't get elsewhere? And I think the answer to that question for TNA Impact Cross the Line is yes. Okay, so now we talked about the game that I thought looked the best on the PSP. Now let's talk about the game that I feel plays the best on the PSP, and that, my friends, is none other than Def Jam The Takeover. Kind of a spin-off off of Def Jam Fight for New York, an incredible game. Kind of an homage, if you will, to the old Aki games with a hip-hop flair, which for me personally, as a kid, was a dream come true. Was super heavy into hip-hop, super heavy into wrestling. This game was a perfect blend of both of those worlds. But anyways, the game on the PSP plays quite similarly. And I love how fluid this gameplay is. I love the crowd interactions, the environmental grapples, the weapons, being able to choose various fighting styles and finishing off any kind of opponent in brutal fashion, like the kickboxer with those sweeping head kicks, or the takedowns from the Street Fighters. All of it is here in the PSP version, and it's done so well. The graphics don't even appear to take too bad of a dive on the PSP either, especially if you're playing upscaled on an emulator, but natively just on a regular PSP console, it looks great, it feels great, and the only glaring difference you're gonna see is the story mode isn't told with cutscenes, organic, live motion cutscenes, whatever you want to call them. It's told by these stills that are voiced over and kind of go picture to picture, sort of like a PowerPoint presentation or whatever, but that's only initially, and then once you get into the main game hub, it's very much the same as the console versions. You have an overview of the town map. You can visit various shops. You can get new jewelry. You can get new accessories, clothes. You can learn new fighting styles. It's a true RPG system that's carried over from the console version. The story mode on the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube was sensational. And it's a good story mode here as well, and a perfect portable experience. I love Def Jam storytelling. It's so over the top, it's so outlandish, but it's a guilty pleasure. Besides the story mode, you do have the ability to create a fighter of your choosing. It's not super in-depth, but then again, the console version wasn't very in-depth either. There are plenty of characters to play as and unlock, so you'll be quite busy with the story mode. This game has a ton of replayability. You'll get a lot of playtime out of the story mode as well, and there's a lot of incentives to just mess around in exhibition mode. I mean, some of the combos, some of the secret interactions with the environment you can discover, and all the different venues that you're going to want to fight in. This game has a lot going for it. And that's just it. I guess the biggest compliment I could pay to this game is that I can easily recommend it to those who aren't even a fan of wrestling or hip-hop. It's just a good video game on its own, and for a game to be filled with multiple gimmicks, if you will, that's pretty high praise. Check out Def Jam The Takeover if you haven't. If you've only played the console versions of Vendetta and Fight for New York, I'm telling you, this one is worth your time. Now I want to talk about a non-SmackDown vs. Raw WWE game, and you might know what I'm talking about here. WWE All-Stars. This game, kind of like TNA Impact, was released on everything. The DS, the 3DS actually, the PSP, the PS2, the PS3, the 360. This game is on everything, and the PSP version is definitely not the best version, don't get me wrong. It's very muddied down. Rather than lowering the polygon count like they did in the SmackDown vs. Raw games, they kind of just muddied the visuals on the PSP. And it works, especially if you're playing just on a regular PSP console, but this is the kind of muddying filter that doesn't even look good upscaled on an emulator, unfortunately. But the gameplay is pretty good, and that's why I'm recommending this game. WWE All-Stars is perfect for just a pick up and play experience. There are the same modes that you have on the console version, the story mode where you can like run the gauntlet to challenge The Undertaker or grab a partner and face DX, take the tag titles from them. They have that there. They also have the Fantasy Warfare, which is just a series of quote-unquote dream matches. I don't know whose dream matches they are necessarily, but they're somebody's dream matches, somebody at THQ maybe. And there's a decent amount of replayability there. I do like WWE All-Stars on its own, and the PSP version is kind of just more of the same. If you like that experience, if you like the over-the-top, if you like that arcade-style gameplay, this is going to be right up your alley. It's not super... It does have commentary in-game, and it does have the Fink doing ring intros and stuff and introducing the match types, and it adds a nice flair. But there's a limited roster, there's a limited selection for arenas, and if that's something that's a deal breaker for you, then you might want to steer clear from this game. But it does have a creation suite that's pretty good. I was able to make a character with layers, I was able to do multiple saved characters, so that's pretty good. I mean, you can't say that for every mobile wrestling game. I know we're setting the bar kind of low, but you got to think about the kind of hardware we're dealing with here, so I'll take that all day. This game also really shines in the ad hoc mode where you can connect another PSP and play with a buddy. That's where you're going to get the most value out of this game. I think the multiplayer is a lot of fun in All-Stars, so take that as you will. WWE All-Stars is not a game I can recommend to everybody on the PSP. The console version is sensational, but if you like that version, this one is worth checking out as well. Now, before I get into the main event here, I do want to quickly mention a Japan-only release that you can find rather easily online, but do note that it is a Japanese-only game, so you're not going to be able to read it or understand it if you don't speak that language, of course, but the gameplay is good enough that I think it warrants a mention here in this video, and that is the Ultimate Muscle port. The GameCube version that I covered in a separate video a while ago, they did a version on the PSP as well, which is excellent. Just the gameplay is superb. It's mesh between kind of a fast-paced All-Stars-y kind of gameplay and that old-school Aki gameplay from the No Mercy WrestleMania 2000 days. It just works really well. Of course, it's got that over-the-top anime flair to it, but the moves have depth and there's real strategy. I love the momentum system in this game, and being able to string consecutive moves together will further boost your damage, as it should. Really, I can't recommend this game enough either. I had to mention it on the list. Even if you don't speak Japanese, I don't, but I think the gameplay is the real star, and you can navigate the menus easily enough. There's always Google Translate if you really absolutely need it, but just a game to be on the lookout for. If you ever come across it, just check it out. Alright, so lastly, I'm not going to talk about SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 or 2007, although I do believe that overall those are the two very best wrestling games you can play on the PSP, just as a total package. That's it, 06 and 07, they're interchangeable in whichever way you see fit. Rather, I'm going to discuss the last SmackDown vs. Raw game in general and the last WWE game released on the PSP, and that would be SmackDown vs. Raw 2011. Now, the gameplay does take a dive compared to 06 and 07. It's just not as good. But hey, that's not exclusive to the PSP versions. I think across the board, all versions of 2011 gameplay-wise are just not as good as 06 or 07. But I don't think the 2011 PSP game is even gameplay-wise as good as the PS2 version. We all know it's not as good as the PS3 and 360 version. It doesn't have the brand new weapon physics that game has, and I've made a whole video in the past about how much I like those weapon physics, so why the hell am I saving this game for last to talk about? Why am I coming to you, the good viewer in good faith, and recommending this game that the gameplay is kind of lackluster? It's because of everything else. This game is so feature-rich that the gameplay, which I hold in such high regards, if you've been watching this channel for any period of extended time, you know that gameplay is the be-all, end-all. If you don't have good gameplay, you don't got jack. But I think that the gameplay is just barely squeaks by, just barely good enough that all these other features that this game has more than makes up for it, and I can easily recommend this game to anybody who has a PSP and wants to play a great wrestling game. Let's talk about some of these features. Road to WrestleMania. All 5 paths are here, with the cutscenes, with the commentary, with the backstage, and hey, it's not shut your mouth backstage roaming, but it wasn't that on the console version either, so I don't know what you're asking for here. Road to WrestleMania is playable here. All 5 paths, I say it again. Create a Finisher is here, Story Designer is here, a great Create a Superstar mode where you can use morphing technology and add layers. You can't do that on every portable wrestling game. It's here on this one. And the most gratifying thing I think about this game is that it has the brand spanking new Universe mode from 2011, fully playable. All the cutscenes, all the rivalries, all the title history, all the rankings are here. A portable Universe mode experience. What else can I say? I just get so frustrated. It's so bittersweet revisiting these SmackDown vs. Raw PSP games because THQ and Yuke's just made miracles on them, and it just makes you wish that they would have followed through with some Vita releases of WWE 12 or WWE 13 because they were really cooking with grease, boy, with these SVR games, and I just wish we could have gotten more of the same in the HD universe on the Vita. That's all. But back on topic, if you can get past the gameplay, and hey, this is just a personal preference thing, the gameplay, it's not for me, it's serviceable, like I said, but some people actually like the 2011 gameplay on the PSP, so if you're one of those people, this is a 10 out of 10 game, and you've got to check it out. Visually, it's more or less the same as 06 and 07, but the crowd size is just pathetic. That's a minor hiccup. Graphics, I don't get too hung up on, especially on a PSP version, so don't expect some all-star stellar presentation upgrades if the last PSP wrestling games you played were 06 and 07. You're not going to get that here. But to have a fully functional story designer in this game, I love the story designer mode. I've spent so much time playing the story designer mode in games. It's something that I long to have return to the 2K series, maybe one day. But you have it here on the PSP. You can create your own finishers, and like I said, the universe mode, Road to WrestleMania, you got multi-man matches, entrances look great, the models are hit or miss, but they're just always gonna be on the PSP. SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 doesn't get talked about a lot, especially on the PSP, but I'm putting it here at the top of my recommendations for the PSP just because of all the features that I mentioned before. But now I want to toss it back to you guys and hear from you. Have you played any of these games? Do you recommend any of them? Which ones did I leave out of this video that you want to hear me talk about? I think I covered them all, except for a few of the SmackDown vs. Raw games in between, like 08 and 09. So let me know if those are your favorite, because hey, every wrestling game I believe is somebody's favorite, either for nostalgic reasons or because it just meant something to them personally at that moment. Maybe it helped them get through a hard time. I want to hear about your experiences with some of these PSP games. And if you do end up trying some of these, let me know. I would love to hear about your experience. Anyways, guys, this was my PSP seminar, if you will, regarding all the wrestling games on it. I love them. The PSP was a fantastic console, but especially so when it came to these wrestling games. Thanks for watching, guys. In November of 2004, the Nintendo DS launched in North America, and needless to say, it was incredible. The Game Boy Advance was epic in its own right, but the 2D nature of the system's graphics was limiting in terms of what a wrestling game could be on it. But within just the first year of the DS's release, we saw promising 3D capabilities from Mario 64 to Nintendogs. My wheels immediately started turning, thinking about a true portable version of SVR, and well, I had to wait for quite a while. In December of 2005, my dream finally came true, but it was on Sony's PSP when SVR06 came out. It was everything I could have possibly imagined, a true console-like experience on the go. But I still couldn't help but wonder about the untapped touch control features that could be implemented into a wrestling game on the Nintendo DS. But lo and behold, SVR07 came and went with a PSP release and not a Nintendo DS one. And as the years went by, it became apparent that the DS simply lacked the power to deliver a competent port of a WWE game. And I began to lose hope. Until the following year, when the first WWE game finally came to Nintendo DS hardware, SmackDown vs. Raw 2008. Right away when you boot up the game, this is the menu you're greeted with. Yes, very bare bones. Exhibition, season, or options. The options are just clear data, watch the credits, or enable a rumble feature. Nothing to adjust the difficulty, AI, nothing like that. In Exhibition, you have the option of playing single player or connecting to another Nintendo DS and facing your friend one-on-one. Since I don't have any friends, we're just going to check out the single player. And yes, there are very limited matches. There's no multi-man matches, there's no tag matches, just variations of 1v1s. A little disappointing, but when you see how the gameplay works, it makes sense. The roster is definitely not a strong point of this game either. There are no women to select, there are no legends to select, and the models themselves can be pretty hit or miss. There's only 2 ECW superstars in CM Punk and John Morrison, aka Johnny Nitro, to choose from. Why even include ECW at all? But hey, this is the Nintendo DS we're talking about. It's not going to be the best roster. But I mean, what the hell were you expecting? A WWE 13-esque roster? You were just not going to get that. The carts at this time were not like the Switch carts we see now. You could only store so much data. And here's the arenas, and you have a surprising amount of options here. All of these arenas look different, kind of like the real-life counterparts at the time. And as you can see, you can scroll on for a little bit here. They have all the big-name pay-per-views from this era. I was very impressed with the options here. So here we go. These are the entrances. They're abbreviated for sure. You do get a little Titantron, and then an entrance. A little bit of pyro for some guys. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these models are pretty hit or miss. It's hard to mess up Rey Mysterio. He looks cool in virtually every game that he's in. So no complaints for Rey's model here. You can, of course, skip these entrances at any time, but hey, at least they actually show your character going all the way to the ring. They don't even have that in, like, AEW Fight Forever. And I know that's an unnecessary cheap shot at AEW Fight Forever. I apologize. And here comes Hardcore Holly. The audio in these games is actually not too bad for being on the Nintendo DS either. The theme songs do sound clear. The crowd noises sound okay, there's generally good atmosphere going on in these games. You got a ring announcer reading off each superstar's profile, their stats coming down to the ring, and then the bell rings. Right away, you'll notice that there are no button inputs. Yep, everything is done via the touchscreen. You have 3 options for attacks initially: fast, medium, and strong, numbered 1, 2, and 3 accordingly. Fast attacks can be anything from a simple punch to wrenching on an arm, depending on your wrestler's positioning, that is. Medium attacks can be quick grapple attacks, and strong attacks can be, stronger grapple setups. There is an element of strategy here in knowing when to use these 3 options. For example, fast attacks beat mediums, mediums are quicker than strong, but strong attacks can attack even when hit by a fast attack. Just like rock, paper, scissors, everything is good and bad against something. There's a variety of ways to apply and escape holds, like swiping rapidly from side to side, swirling your stylus in a circle, or quick repeated touches in a selected area. These are a bit awkward at first, but you'll get the hang of them in no time, and even get to a point where you know which holds will trigger what method of escape so you can prepare yourself early. Now, finishers work a little bit differently too than they do on their console counterparts for SVR08. Instead of there being like momentum that you work towards progressively after doing moves to get your finisher stored up, you just have to do a specified amount of damage in a specific area of your opponent's body and then get them in the proper position to get your finisher icon to appear. Once it does, you can initiate a finisher, but you still have to complete the designated touchscreen controls to pull it off. After you pull off your finisher, you'll automatically go for a pin unless your finisher is a submission, and you have to button mash with your stylus, so I guess you have to touch mash that little red circle, and you have to keep your mashes, I guess, in the circle. Otherwise, they won't count as a correct input. It's actually quite challenging, and if you don't have a stylus, good luck trying to fill that up. It is a lot harder than you would think. You can go for a pin at any time. It doesn't have to be after a finisher per se. You can do it just when your opponent is grounded, or sometimes grapples will end in you doing a small cradle. But generally, it's best to go for it after the finisher, as in my experience, that's the best time to beat your opponent. Kicking out of a pinfall is the same concept, just instead of mashing with your stylus the little circle, you'll be swiping left to right within this little designated area, and you need to keep it in that area and just kind of swipe back and forth as fast as you can. Another match type here is the Extreme Rules match. Not too different than one-on-one, except you can choose different things to help you along the way. For example, you get to choose an ally from anyone on the roster. They add various attribute bonuses to your superstar, plus at an opportune moment within the match, you can tap on their help icon and they'll come help turn the tables in your favor. You can also choose your own weapon that you want to have under the ring apron during a moment in the match where you're down and out for a chance to once again turn the tide in your favor. Now, this is just a visual kind of thing for immersion. Each weapon kind of handles exactly the same. Not too much variety here, but it is a cool, nice little touch to make this exhibition match feel different than just the one-on-one. Overall, I do like the implementation of the Extreme Rules match. It's not too different from the singles match, but it has enough gimmicks that makes it feel like its own unique match type, and at the end of the day, I guess that's all we're really looking for, right? Here you can see a sequence where CM Punk is able to go under the ring apron and select the weapon that we chose for him, in this case the barbed wire 2x4 because of course, and then we have a chance to use it, but your opponent always has a chance to beat you to the punch. The real kicker here is if your opponent does cancel out your weapon animation, that's it. You're done. You don't get another chance to use a weapon. So you have to use it very wisely and just hope you get lucky against your opponent. Otherwise, you're just back to using a regular singles match, essentially. Similar to grabbing a weapon, an ally can come and interfere in the match. We chose allies before the match. Our opponent also gets an ally. And if you're beating up on your opponent too bad, you will see that ally run out. Now, just like the weapon, you have a chance to counter. If you do, you'll fight them off, you'll never see them again. If they do actually attack you successfully, then you won't see them again either. They're just a one-time appearance. This is cool, but it's just a one-and-done thing, and then you never see them again. It's just, think of it as just another attack in your arsenal that you're able to use at your convenience. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much the gist of Extreme Rules matches, so let's move on to another match type, shall we? 3 Stages of Hell, one of my favorite match types in WWE games history. After all, it's the best of 3 worlds, essentially. You get to pick any 3 matches and then play them consecutively. Right? Wrong. In this game, your 3 stages are chosen for you, and they are as follows: singles match, and singles match. That's right, you don't get to choose, it's just best 2 out of 3 falls. That's what they should have called this match type. It's rather misleading to call it 3 stages of hell. It's a best 2 out of 3 falls. That being said, I do like this kind of mode being put in the game. It's a happy medium between a singles match and an Iron Man match where you don't necessarily want to play like a full 15-minute session, but you do want a longer game mode against your buddy or against the AI even. So it is what it is, right? After each fall, both superstars will recover some of their damage done, and then you start the process over again. It's a little underwhelming, but it is an added match type, so I guess I have to salute it there. There's only so many different ways you can do singles matches, so this 3 stages of hell, quote unquote, is passable in my book. Now, the last match type I want to touch on here, because I think the others are pretty self-explanatory, is the last man standing match. Now, you would think that would be self-explanatory in its own right, and as a wrestling fan, as I'm sure you are watching this, you know that a last man standing match is when you beat an opponent so badly they cannot respond to a referee's 10 count. However, in this version of Last Man Standing, it's just the first superstar to successfully damage their opponent's limbs to a point where they get red. That's it. You'll see I damage Randy Orton's head, get it red with some corner punches, and it results in a KO. Therefore, John Cena is the last man standing. I like the match type. I like this version of it. They should have called it something else, right? Or at least done the 10 count. Humor me here. Now, I gotta tell you guys, I think the season mode is actually where this game absolutely shines. You're able to kind of free roam in a sense. You can choose different sections of the backstage area to roam to. Kind of like in Here Comes the Pain, only you're not limited to just if there's a superstar back there at the time or not. You can just go there at any time, and there is reason to do this. After all, you can go to the training room at any time and use your time tokens, as they're called in this game, to level up your character by doing various minigames. There's a few to choose from, and they're actually pretty fun, and that's how you progress through the game in terms of just building up your attribute points. It's very rewarding, and you can actually get pretty good at this eventually. The game progresses on a week-to-week basis, just like the real television show, and you'll always start each week in your own locker room where you can check different weapons you've acquired, see different alliances you've formed, and each time you beat a superstar, you can also check their bios out. It's a cool little tidbit. Roaming around backstage is pretty fun, especially when you learn all the little nooks and crannies that you can search, all the compartments you can look into to look for more training tokens. You can get told off by a lot of superstars, but some of them you talk to will advance the story, and they're necessary to get future matches. So it is a cool aspect of the game it's really neat that they put it in there, and some superstars are written in their voices also, which just adds to the overall immersion of the game. As you just naturally progress through this season mode, you'll have different opportunities from various superstars to form alliances. Then in your locker room, you can call upon these alliances for help in matches in the future. It's pretty cool. You can also make enemies, so the season mode does a good job at making you feel like you're living the life of a WWE superstar, as every good season mode should. You'll even get cool interactions backstage that give you true player choice. For example, I ran into Mr. Kennedy, who has beef with John Cena, who happens to also have beef with Booker T. So he tries to enlist my help in stealing a spray paint can, vandalizing John Cena's locker, and then planting the spray paint can on Booker T in his duffel bag to make it look like he did it. I mean, that's just insane. These things may seem little, but they add up to be a great overall experience. This season mode, I can't say enough good things about it. I actually can't remember any other season mode that had little fetch quests, side quests, whatever you want to call them, like this. It's a cool thing. I would love to see it implemented in today's 2K MyRise modes. I think it could easily be done with the technology we have today. What do you guys think? Would you like to see something like this return, or am I crazy? I can't be the only one. The matches themselves in season mode are filled with optional challenges that you can do. If you complete these challenges within your match, then you get additional training time to upgrade your superstar, so it's worth your time to try to complete them, but it's not the end of the world if you don't. Again, they are completely optional, like every objective in a match in your season mode should be. But not that I'm going to rag on any other games. Moving on. As you progress through your storylines and get into various feuds, you can climb the ladder challenge champions, win championships, switch shows, and all that. I don't want to get into too much of the story itself for the uninitiated who actually want to play this someday and don't want any spoilers, but hey, let me tell you, it's a lot of fun and you can play it your own way. Forge your own alliances, make your own enemies. It's pretty neat in that regards. In conclusion, SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, it was a great initial foray into the Nintendo DS. It's far from a perfect game, but which game is perfect, especially on its debut on a new platform, especially one as uncharted as the Nintendo DS was at the time? If you were a kid who only had a Nintendo DS and had no other way to play a SmackDown vs. Raw game, this was a pretty competent entry in the series, and the season mode itself could provide you with some hours of fun on some long car rides or after school. I mean, this was a great and new way to experience a WWE game on the go. So for that, I have to tip my cap to THQ and Amaze Entertainment, who rather than Yuke's, oversaw development on this DS version of the game. But that's all I got, guys. Thanks to everyone who watched this video. When the SmackDown vs. Raw series finally came to the Nintendo DS in November of 2007, I figured, hey, this was as good as it was going to get. Sure, it didn't mirror the console version of the game at all like the PSP version did, but I grew to appreciate the strategic, albeit novel gameplay that the touch controls provided. But when I saw the gameplay improvements being promised for the follow-up release, SVR09, I was intrigued. Now, for you youngins watching this video who grew up on nothing but the 2K series, I know this is going to sound hard to believe, but there was actually a time, long ago, where each yearly WWE game released looked and felt different from the last. I know, mind-blowing stuff, right? So I couldn't wait to give WWE's sequel on the Nintendo DS a spin. Although I didn't at the time of its release, I was fully locked into the next-gen console versions. So I figured why not review it now? And I won't be blinded by nostalgia for this review either. Let's dive in. Right away upon booting up the game, you can see that a couple of features have been added to the main menu. The options screen itself now has more, options to choose from, and the addition of a tutorial mode to help you get acquainted to the new touch controls is nice too. But even more impressive is the newly added Create a Superstar mode. I gotta tell you, I can't believe they were able to implement this into a DS game. It's not super in-depth or anything, of course not, but if you curb your expectations, you'll find a surprisingly in-depth creation suite that's better than even some more modern wrestling games. AEW Fight Forever. In all seriousness, it's cool that they added this, even though you can only have 2 created wrestlers saved at a time. There are more match types added, although still only one-on-one variations. It's pretty cool to see how much work the developers put into refining this version of the game over its predecessor. And based on just features alone, I'd say mission accomplished. The roster is improved from last year too, although still not anything to write home about. All the big stars from 2008 are there, and a few interesting inclusions as well. Once again, all the pay-per-view and weekly show arenas from the year are available to choose from, and they all look great. Presentation was good on the DS version of SVR08, but it's really taken up a notch for 09. We have full entrances here, from the ramp all the way down to the ring. These animations look pulled directly from their console version counterparts. For the old DS, this is incredible to see. When the bell rings, you'll notice that the 3 touch icon controls from 08 are gone. Yep, you now have full control over your selected wrestler. You can walk anywhere, exit and enter the ring at will, climb the turnbuckle, whatever your heart desires. However, this is still the Nintendo DS, so of course the touchscreen has to be the focal point of gameplay. You control your movement with the D-pad, but everything else is done with your stylus. Tap the screen to throw a strike, draw a circle to grapple, draw 2 consecutive circles to strong grapple. You can alter the kind of strike or grapple you do depending on which direction you press the D-pad while doing them. This may seem simple, and it is to an extent, but this is a game I highly recommend using the original DS hardware and a stylus for, as the precision required to perform these moves isn't well suited to just your fingers. The gameplay isn't going to knock anyone's socks off, but it is a step up from the rock, paper, scissors styles of '08. These matches play more like a console version, and the added variety of match types helps prolong the fun. There's the ladder/TLC matches that have you tapping the hanging title repeatedly to bring it down, but be sure to damage your opponent adequately first, or you'll just be repeatedly knocking them down and waiting for them to climb back up so you can knock them back down, rinse and repeat. Then there's the table match, which plays exactly how you'd expect. And finally, the cage match, which was probably my favorite new match type. You tap the designated spots on the cage wall to climb, and it's as simple as that. Now let's talk about the mode that carried the last SVR game on the DS, Season Mode. This mode was also revamped for 2009, but the premise remains largely unchanged. You can select any wrestler on the roster, including your created superstar, and start a pilgrimage to capture every single title in the WWE. Except you don't start as a fully fledged member of the roster, you'll first have to earn your spot by stringing together some wins and boosting your rep. But more on that later. You'll start every single week of every single month right here in your little apartment, which is pretty cool to look at. You can walk around freely. It reminds me of the locker rooms from like SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 on the console version, except you have a little bit more freedom and more immersion because you actually see your character walking around. And you can do things in here like answer the phone that'll advance storyline plots. You can check win-loss records, title holders. You can go shopping and buy different consumables or equipment that'll further boost your stats. You'll see on the top screen, you get to see your superstar's current attribute ratings. And you can improve these by going to the gym, working out, boosting your durability. That's where you can boost your defense, and your offensive attributes are boosted via XP that you earn from winning matches. I know that seems a little complicated, but trust me, it's not at all. It's very simple. But you can see the RPG roots here from the developers. This game is a grind. It takes a long time to boost your attributes, to boost your resiliency. And you'll be grinding every single week in matches, but also going to the gym. Now, similar to SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, all the gym activities are done via the touch screen, and you have different options for different parts of the body that you want to improve resiliency on. For example, the bench presses will improve your torso and your arms. You have dumbbells that'll, for some reason, increase your head durability. And then, of course, squats, which will improve your leg durability. Now, you'll have to do these every single week, set your high scores, and depending on how well you do in these touchscreen control mini games, you will increase your durability by that much in the form of XP. So yeah, it really is a grind, and this is something that you're able to do once per week. But I did not notice an option to simulate the experience like you had last year on the 2008 version, so you will have to physically do all of these. Well, not physically do them, but simulate doing them by touching the screen. You know what I mean. Moving on. To get in between areas, you go to the overworld. You do this by just leaving your apartment at the beginning of the game. You can see the arena where you go have your match, WWE headquarters, and of course the gym, which we just talked about. WWE headquarters is interesting. You got superstars scattered throughout as you do all of these different areas, including the gym, including the arena, where you go up and talk to them, and they usually just have 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, which are more often than not pointless. But they are written in their characters' voices, and sometimes they're pretty funny, actually. So I do recommend talking to some of these superstars. Just once, though. They don't have repeating or new dialogue, nothing new to say. You got all the GMs from all the shows there, Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. There you can check your progress. You can go upstairs to Vince McMahon himself and request a show transfer. But your rep, which you see on the bottom left corner of the top screen, that rules everything. If you want to check how you're doing, the GM is just going to tell you the status of your current rep. As you can see, there are little lines within that bar, which is your rep. Each of those lines is a different benchmark, and once you exceed a certain benchmark, you'll qualify for different titles, different feuds, and different opportunities. So win matches, work out, boost your resiliency, boost your attributes, gain XP, The weekly grind, if you've played RPGs before, specifically JRPGs, because that's what this developer of this game specialized in, then you kind of know what's going on here. It's a grind, kind of like random wild encounters, level grinding in an RPG. That's what this is. So if you enjoy that kind of gameplay, you're going to feel right at home here. The backstage area is kind of fun to explore at first, but there's really no point to it, at least not initially that I could tell. You'll see superstars from all the brands back there. You can go introduce yourself, say hello, but it doesn't really lead to anything. You, of course, can just go straight through the curtain to your next match as well. That's what I do most of the time. That's what you'll find yourself doing by default. And that's where the true grind will begin. Now, I will say, if you're going to pick a ECW superstar, be prepared to face the same guy over and over and over again. I faced Elijah Burke for 19 out of my first 22 matches. No exaggeration. The ECW roster is, after all, only, 5 superstars deep in this game, which is an improvement over the 2 superstars from 2008. But yeah, if you don't want to face the same superstars within a short window of time, or in consecutive weeks for that matter, I would stay away from picking an ECW guy to do the season mode with, that's all. After you win your match, you'll get to distribute some attribute points. You'll need 200 to advance per attribute, I suppose. So don't expect to be leveling up power right away, for example. It's going to take some time. I figured it was best to just focus on one discipline at first rather than spreading it out so that you can advance as quickly as possible in one discipline, but to each their own. You'll also get a boost in rep depending on the streak you're on, the quality of opponent, and this is the core gameplay cycle of the game. Do this enough times, and you'll get a phone call from your GM telling you that you made the pay-per-view. You'll get a phone call from Vince McMahon saying you made the big league roster, which you kind of already are, but for storyline purposes, I guess, we'll play along with that. You'll get phone calls saying that you've earned title opportunities, and that's the game. That's season mode. If that sounds like fun to you, then this is going to be a great time. To me, it was fun. I enjoyed this kind of grind. I don't know if it's something that I can necessarily play long term, but there was a certain level of satisfaction when you finally climb the ladder and snag a championship, and you get a good boost to all of your other attributes when you hold the title. You'll unlock different attires and different items that boost all of your stats. It feels really good. You feel like a champ, and as you defend it, you get a bonus to the rep that you gain per win, which helps you boost your status to other general managers so that you can easily transfer to other shows and then conquer their championships as well. And you really feel a great sense of pride just being this title collector. It's pretty cool. So if I was a kid who only had this game on the Nintendo DS, that was my only option, and I was going on a long car ride or a vacation per se, I think this was an adequate way to get your wrestling game fix. Not only that, it improved on its predecessor in almost every single way, which is what every good sequel is supposed to do. It added Create a Superstar. It has a tutorial mode. It has more options for dominant hands. If you're a left-handed person, this game will accommodate you. Things like that. The roster was improved. The gameplay, of course, was improved. Or just different, depending on how you view it. I think it was improved. And the season mode, while it didn't have the little branching paths, the little one-off side stories, the fetch quests that 2008 had, I really enjoyed the 2008 season mode. This one was more of a traditional, I like to think back to games like WrestleMania 2000 on the Nintendo 64, where it was just going through a calendar year and trying to climb the rankings. It's more of that old school style, but with an RPG, a genuine RPG twist to it. It was a lot of fun. I can easily recommend this game to anyone who's never tried it. I wouldn't go out of your way and spend too much money, but thankfully I don't think it's going to be more than, $5 or $10 complete in box at this point. So if you are curious, I would give it a shot. Overall, if I had to give this game a rating, now it's on the Nintendo DS scale, so bear that in mind. I would give this game, and with 10 being Here Comes the Pain, and 1 being WWE 2K20, I'd say this game is a solid 5 out of 10. And hey, for me, that scale, 5 is pretty good, okay? This is not IGN where 7 is average. No, 5 is average to me. And this game is an average overall wrestling game, but I think for a Nintendo DS game, it's maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10. It's about as good as you can possibly get. Now, I say that without having played this game's sequel. That'll be in a future video. But guys, I love 2009, I love 2008, I felt like this game was an improvement across the board. How do you guys feel? Have you played SmackDown vs. Raw 2009? Do you plan on checking it out anytime soon? I recommend it once again, and thanks to you guys for recommending this game to me in the first place. A lot of people told me in my last review video, hey, you gotta check out 2009, you gotta check out 2010, I intend to do so. As always guys, thanks for checking this video out. When the PSP launched in North America in March of 2005, I immediately began fantasizing about a WWE game on the go. We had portable wrestling games before, sure, but they failed to measure up to their console counterparts, especially during this time period where wrestling games were on absolute fire. Luckily, I didn't have to wait long, because later that same year, SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 hit the PSP, and needless to say, I was blown away. Finally, we had the console version of a mainline WWE game on the go, and for the most part, it was exactly the console version. A seemingly miraculous port. To this day, I still don't know how they did it. All the match types from the PS2 version are here, with no compromises. Even 6-man multi-matches, it's all here. The roster is also surprisingly untouched. Not that the SVR06 roster was huge to begin with, but it's still impressive to see. Visually, the game looks like a softer version of its PS2 counterpart. The polygon count is noticeably lower, but on the small PSP screen, it looks damn good. There are full entrances, and the motions are pulled directly from the console version. They look and sound great. The crowds are noticeably shrunk down, with anything beyond the first few rows of 2D cardboard fans just looking like painted background filler, but this is fine for the sake of gameplay. Speaking of gameplay, it's ported beautifully. Everything from the start of match minigames, the in-game interactions, heel and face tactics, and the stamina management system is intact. There is no commentary. You instead have a great soundtrack to listen to during matches. Voiceover is present for Superstars in Season Mode, but the commentary was the limit, I guess. Playing PSP as a kid, I rarely had the volume up anyways, so it's no biggie. The gameplay itself feels good. The dip in frames per second isn't bad at all. It feels very good to play. Anything you could do on the PS2 version, you can do in this game. Fulfill your fantasy, brawl backstage and interact with the environment for fun animations, or try to bury your opponent alive. Again, it's all here. It truly is miraculous what they were able to do on the PSP at the time. This was their first foray onto the system. Incredible stuff. The season mode is exactly the PS2 season mode. You have all the cutscenes, all the voiceover, it's all there. It's the same season mode. There's plenty of ways to make money in-game by progressing through season mode and completing the optional challenges, which you can then spend on various unlockables in the shop, just like on the PS2 version. Although you do miss the season mode commentary from JR and King, I'll still give this mode an A. It's a blast to play through. They even have the full GM mode, a new game mode on the PS2 version, fully playable and functional here. Absolutely bonkers. The creation suite is amazing. You're not nearly as limited as you'd expect to be. You can make your wrestler look like pretty much whatever you'd like, complete with body morphing options and layers to put together to your content. Of course, you can customize entrances and movesets too. I was blown away with the options available here. Then, obviously, exclusive to the PSP version, you have the option to connect wirelessly to another PSP, where you can exchange created superstars or championships. That's right, you can exchange your own created championships. You can also play against each other and even have title matches for those created championships. Very cool stuff. Also exclusive to the PSP are the arcade game modes. You can connect wirelessly with a friend to play these too. You've got the game show, which is just a series of timed questions that anyone who even casually watches WWE should have no problem with, complete with a leaderboard to track high scores. It's fun for the first couple times, then you'll probably never touch it again. Then you have the Eugene Airplane game, which involves you trying to balance Eugene on his way to the ring during his entrance, avoiding the carelessly left hazards littering the outside of the ring. This is a fun little game with a leaderboard as well, but like the game show, there's a little room for replayability here. The final arcade game is a full-on Texas Hold'em sim, and you can tell the most effort went into this game. Each superstar has their own disposition for the game. Some are more aggressive with their bets, while others are more calm and calculated. There are also clueless superstars who will be chaotic with their betting. This is a pretty funny sight to behold. All these wrestlers, some in their ring gear, sitting around a table making silly emotes, playing cards. I actually spent a lot of time playing this mode as a kid, and it's still amusing today. Now, with SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 being the last SmackDown vs. Raw game to be exclusive to the Sony family, being the PS2 and the PSP, we saw the differences between the portable version and the console version grow. Of course, the 360 with SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 had the big leap, next-gen graphics, the HD textures, the sweat dripping off the superstars. You weren't going to see that in the PSP version, but it was still a competent port for years to come. But it does kind of make you wish that THQ stuck with the portable version of SmackDown vs. Raw just a little bit longer, that they kept porting the WWE games a little bit longer. Because with WWE 12 and WWE 13 and then 2K14, we had the PS Vita. Now, a lot of companies did not put out entries on the Vita, okay? The Vita did not live up to its full potential, of course, we all know that. But just think about the power of the Vita, those HD textures, that screen, that beautiful OLED screen. If we could have gotten mobile ports of WWE on the Vita, oh my goodness, that's the stuff of dreams and legends. But I just one more time have to point out how absurd it was that we got a almost mirror perfect port of SVR06 on the PSP. The closest thing I could put into comparison today is, imagine if 2K25 was ported to the Nintendo Switch and it was exactly WWE 2K25 on PS5. That you can't even wrap your head around that, right? Because think about the disaster that was 2K18. But think about a perfect 2K25 port, complete with all the modes, the My Faction, the Island, the GM mode, the My Rise, all being there, right? That's you can't even fathom that today. But back then, in the year 2005, mind you, Yuke's and THQ were able to do just that. You gotta tip your cap. What a phenomenal job. And now I'll toss it back to you guys. Where were you when SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 came to the PSP? Did you play it at launch? Did you bring your PSP to school? Did you swap created superstars with your friends or battle over created championships? Or have you revisited it since? Have you tried it for the first time as an adult years later? That's okay too. I'm not going to shame anybody here. We're all friends. We're all lovers of professional wrestling video games. That's what it's all about, baby. And I long to see the days where we can return to true mobile ports of competent console wrestling games. But first things first, we gotta get a competent console wrestling game, but that is a video for another day. Thanks for watching, guys. So the biggest knock on WWE's first foray onto the Nintendo DS, which was SVR08, was that it didn't feel like a wrestling game, which is a valid complaint. Its quick-time event gameplay featuring a rock-paper-scissors-like turn-based combat was met with mixed reviews to say the least. So TNA Impact Cross the Line looked to rectify this with their 2010 release on the portable console. Now, TNA Cross the Line was also released on the PSP, and that is a pretty solid version. I covered it in a previous video, so be sure to check that out if you're interested. But how does the DS version hold up? Traditionally speaking, the PSP versions of wrestling games always looked and played better, so my expectations were low. After watching some live TNA footage, you're greeted with Samoa Joe staring into the depths of your soul until you tap the touchscreen to get going. And here's what the main menu looks like. Pretty standard as far as DS menus go. The options allow you to adjust sound level and game difficulty, which is quite noticeable on higher levels. You can also watch credits and clear the save data to start over. Achievements is where you can look at all the titles, match wins, and losses of every wrestler in the game, which is actually a neat feature. You can always reset the record books via the clear save option in the options menu. These records are based off the accomplishments of wrestlers in the play game menu, which features standard exhibition matches, Bound for Glory mode, which is this game's story mode, and Victory Road, which is a tournament for a championship, but more on those later. There's a tutorial mode that will walk you through all the new DS controls, and it's quite thorough. I highly recommend going through at least the basics here, as the button combinations needed to do things like climb the turnbuckle will take you quite a while to guess otherwise. But speaking of the controls, you're probably wondering, how's the gameplay? Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. You can perform basic punches, kicks, and grapples with the option to vary these moves by holding down the R button. Holding down the R button also allows you to climb and leave the ring too, so you'll be holding it down a lot. The stylus is used for performing finishers, submission holds, and escaping pinfalls, which is very similar to the SVR DS series. This all sounds fine in theory, but when the bell rings and you're actually in the ring, you'll find that the hit detection is not perfect. In fact, if you're not lined up directly in front of your opponent, you're not going to hit them, period. Yep, you can't even grapple an opponent from behind. Straight missionary only. Matches can be over very quickly on lower difficulties, and once you get the hang of the clunky controls, you'll be squashing the competition like jobbers. Let's talk about those play modes now. Exhibition, as you would suspect, features a few different match types, including single, four corners, steel cage, ultimate X, and tag team matches. Each match type allows for different win conditions, like pinfall, submission, or other stipulations based on the match. However, there are 0 countouts, rope breaks, or disqualifications no matter what the match type is, but you can choose to have weapons laid out on the outside of the ring or not. Not a huge variety here, but this is the DS we're talking about. The WWE games weren't exactly rich with match types either. I think the current selection is fine, albeit a bit underwhelming. As I mentioned earlier, Bound for Glory is indeed this game's story mode. You can pick a wrestler from most of the game's limited roster to run through a personalized story featuring a series of matches and cutscenes. This was pretty damn cool to see. Instead of having one generic storyline, this game incentivizes many playthroughs by giving each wrestler a unique storyline. For example, playing as AJ Styles has you competing in a world title tournament while also trying to fend off a pissed off Abyss. While playing as Hulk Hogan will have you trying to reinforce your authority by showing the young talent you can still get it done in the ring, and that they all need to get on your level, brother. I did enjoy the stories, and the page-by-page dialogue was fine for the DS. These stories are linear, so don't expect to be able to branch out on different paths. If you lose a match, for example, you'll just restart it from your last save point. All in all though, Bound for Glory mode is the highlight of this game. You can get quite a few hours of gameplay out of it. Lastly, we have Victory Road mode, which is just a straightforward tournament where players face multiple opponents to win a title. You can challenge for the Tag Team, X Division, or World Heavyweight Championship. Like I mentioned earlier, the achievements screen tracks all titles won and individual records. It seems like since the dawn of time, every wrestling game ever made featured a tournament mode just like this, so it's good to see TNA cross the line carrying on the tradition, I guess. And that's it. That's the game. There's no creation suite, no online play, nothing. Just 3 play modes and a limited roster. So if the question is, does the core gameplay make up for the lack of features, then the answer to that would be no. Hell no, actually. It's just too stiff to replicate a real match or even enjoy as an arcade-like experience. Sure, the Bound for Glory mode is neat for DS standards, but I'd much rather play the story modes on the SVR DS games. And that's kinda the biggest issue with this game. Had they released it just a couple years earlier alongside the console version, then they would have had a great alternative wrestling game to SVR 08, which was panned by critics as not playing like an actual wrestling game. Whereas TNA Cross the Line offered that experience, albeit a mediocre one. But because a different developer took the helm on this port, and it took a while to make, by the time 2010 rolled around, SVR on the DS got its ish together and was making competent, enjoyable wrestling games on the handheld. So TNA got left in the dust. I don't recommend this game, unless you can find it for dirt cheap or better yet, on an emulator. There are just much better handheld wrestling games out there, including the same game on the PSP. But I'll toss it back to you guys. What do you think of TNA Cross the Line on the DS? Did you play it back in the day when it first came out in 2010? If so, I'd love to hear about your experience with the game. Let me know in the comments. Or have you played this game since then and think it's a steaming pile of crap? Or, and hear me out, are you one of the very few who are going to comment on this video saying they enjoyed this game? I would love to hear about that. There are mainly two types of mobile wrestling games: booking sims and in-ring. Of the former, there are two that really stand out to me as favorites. 80s Mania Wrestling Returns is a booking manager game where you take control of a wrestling promotion starting in the year 1980 and try to maintain the highest rated show over the course of 2 decades. You build your roster out of collectible cards featuring parodies of all the classic greats from the golden, new generation, and attitude era of pro wrestling. Through trial and error, you'll discover new feuds, new tag teams, and more by booking certain superstars together. Try different combinations, yield different results. This game keeps track of all win-loss records, title history, tournament winners, and contenders with an active ranking system that changes based on your booking results. At the start of each month, you can select the type of pay-per-view you want to book. Then you start booking your match cards. The first thing you'll need to do is select the venue for which that night's show takes place. As you progress through your booking career, you'll gain access to many more grand options. There is strategy involved with this process, as certain superstars will get a hometown boost for venues in their hometown. Bigger venues are more expensive initially, sure, but of course can yield the highest income if you sell them out. Certain cards will have requirements for positioning on said card. For example, only cards labeled with opener can compete in an openers only match. The same is true for mid-card, main eventers, and so on. You can add flair to any match, including changing the match type, which will provide various boosts to match quality while posing an extra risk to injury chance. You can also sponsor matches to earn a little extra income, and you can even assign managers to help boost a wrestler of your choosing. Booking shows is a blast, and it keeps the just one more show feeling going until, before you know it, it's 3 a.m. in the morning and you have to get up for work in 2 hours. Not that I'm speaking from experience or anything. But if you aren't old as dirt like I am, and if you didn't grow up in the 80s or 90s and aren't nostalgic for that style of presentation, well, have no fear, because there is a modern Mania Wrestling, and it retains the same core gameplay experience while adding a, well, modern flair to everything. I can't lie, I love the 80s Mania version, I love the music, the menu layout, all that, but I do prefer modern Mania's presentation style, as it is a bit cleaner and easier to navigate. Plus, it's really cool seeing modern representations of the parodies of the wrestlers we see today. I can't recommend either enough. You can't go wrong with 80s or modern Mania Wrestling. Check them out. For an even more in-depth booking sim, there is Wrestling GM. Yep, but don't let the simple name fool you. This game is insanely detailed. You can choose which country to base your promotion out of, each country having their own meta, complete with fully fleshed out backstories. Each show has its own pros and cons for starting out, and you can consider this a sort of starting difficulty based on which country and promotion you begin with. These promotions all have their own starting rosters, completely filled with very in-depth lore for each of them. There are teams, even factions, and rivalries that you can tweak to your liking. You can even create your own superstars from scratch and add them to any promotion you want. This game is all about control, and you damn sure have it here, right down to the script for each match. You can even pick the winners and losers, add interference, choose from a plethora of match types. I mean, the variety is amazing. I cannot recommend this game enough to the die-hard GM mode or universe mode players from WWE games. While 80s and modern Mania Wrestling returns are more pick up and play, kind of casual booking sims, Wrestling GM is anything but casual. I mean, prepare to be doing a lot of reading and really immerse yourself in the culture of what being a promoter is. Because with all the different promotions, all the different territories, all the talent in the game, each with their own backstories, each with their own ranking systems, I mean, you're going to have your hands full in the best way possible. To put it simply, as Tony Khan would say, Wrestling GM is for the sickos. AEW Figure Fighters is a typical mobile game through and through, but there is some fun to be had here. Visually, the game is charming with its action figure aesthetic. You compete in matches that automatically play out based on each figure's stats. Only you can interject at strategic times with a button press of one of your 3 assigned moves. This may seem simple on the surface, and it kind of is, but at higher levels, there is a good amount of thinking involved in when to press these buttons. Good players will capitalize on the auto battle mechanic to ensure they are interrupting their opponent's moves while allowing their own maneuvers to recover during auto moves. You can unlock more wrestlers by progressing through the game's campaign, even unlocking a women's division campaign after going through a couple of tiers of the men's. You'll need to actively upgrade your roster to keep up with your opponents, as they will get tougher during the campaign. This game even has a PvP mode, although in my experience it's not so much a PvP as it is just playing against another user's personalized wrestler, controlled by the AI. A full-on, real PvP mode would have been really interesting. All in all, I can recommend this game to anyone who likes wrestling and is just looking for something to kill a few minutes at a time. I could see this being a decent game to bust out periodically during your lunch break at work or something, but nothing more. Last but certainly not least, because I believe it is the best of this bunch, Wrestling Empire. Yep, I've talked about this on the channel before, and I'm going to talk about it again here because it is on mobile. This game is awesome. From the freedom of backstage transitions to the wide variety of weapon types and interactions, this game truly shines in multiplayer mayhem, but it has enough fun with its wild AI to keep single players on mobile entertained as well. This game even features its own career mode, which I have played many times, and I have so much fun each and every time because each career mode plays out completely differently. It allows for free roam, total control over your wrestler's time and career, with tons of interactions between other characters to make the game world feel alive. This indie game somehow makes its universe feel even more alive and immersive than WWE 2K does. I particularly love the newsletters. You can play this game for free, but paying to upgrade will reward you with more game modes and options. This game gets the highest recommendation from me. Like I said, it is absolutely free to download and try. The AI alone is worth it, as its wacky and unpredictable actions make me laugh out loud. There are so many moments that keep me coming back. For example, I repeatedly bashed my opponent in the face with a weapon in a regular rules match, resulting, of course, in a DQ. And the ref decided to just restart the match because he felt that decision was a bit too rash. I just about lost it. There will be some mildly frustrating moments, like the ref being on the top turnbuckle when you're attempting a pin, but all of this is negligible enough for me to simply laugh it off. That just speaks to how good this game is. Now, before I end the video, I do want to mention a game that has been released on mobile in Japan, but it has not been translated to English yet, and I don't know when it will. Probably within the next few months of me posting this video here. But I do want to mention it because I think it's going to be an absolute banger. Kairosoft, the game company that's known for making simulation-style games on mobile, has released a wrestling game. That's right, and it's called Pro Wrestling Story. It's a simulation game where the player takes charge of a wrestling organization with a focus on training different wrestlers throughout different physical routines. Then you accompany them and watch them grow, watch them win championships, rise through the rankings, and kind of things of that nature. Think of it as like your own personal NXT, what is it called down there? Your own performance center, where you get to just churn out these amazing superstars. If you've ever played Boxing Gym Story, it's another Kairosoft game. I imagine that it's going to play out somewhat similar based on the gameplay footage from the trailer we've seen on the Japanese version. Keep an eye out for this game because, like I said, these are some of the most addicting games you can play. I really wanted to make sure I put a spotlight on this game, and I might just end up making an entirely separate video highlighting this game when it does eventually release in English, because I'm that high on it. So keep an eye out for Pro Wrestling Story. But that's all I have to say today. These are not all of the wrestling games on the App Store, of course. They're just my personal favorites. But I'll toss the question to you. Did I miss anything? What are some of the best wrestling games available on Android, on iOS? Let me know, because quite frankly, I don't know all of the wrestling games. There are many of them, and I could be missing out on some really good ones. These are just my favorites. I do lean more towards the booking sims. I am just that big of a wrestling nerd. I love booking my own show, so of course you see most of those on this list. But again, when it comes to mobile, it's really hard to capture that in-ring experience. I do think that a couple of these get it right, but none better than Wrestling Empire, of course. Wrestling Revolution is also on the App Store. I didn't mention that in here. I could do a whole list of honorable mentions, but I would rather toss it to you guys. So let me know in the comments, what are your favorites? What are your least favorites? Let me know if you check any of these out. Do all the YouTube stuff for me, like, subscribe, all that jazz, and yeah, I will catch you guys next time. Take care.